Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. We hope your week is off to a wonderful start. We are joining you this week to share community connections with you all. These are questions and stories that listeners have taken the time to send in and email to us. And I just love this episode. I love getting to hear from you guys. Remember, if you have a question or story you want to share with Enlightened Empaths, you can email us enlightenedempaths@gmail.com. Do you want to start us off?
I do, and I love this first one because it says, I was hoping to get your advice and insight on my experience with connecting to spirit. I'm a Reiki practitioner and have been dabbling in mediumship as well. When I do Reiki sessions, my intuition is clear, and I can sense things going on in the body and mind of my client. I typically work with my paternal grandmother and occasionally my maternal grandfather during sessions. When I connect to them, it's very clear. I see my grandmother in my mind's eye, and she helps guide me through the body and lets me know when it's time to move to a new spot. My grandfather typically comes in when I'm working on my mom, his daughter, or when I meditate and need guidance on family matters. His energy feels like a big teddy bear hug. I know I trust my intuition when I connect with them, so I don't necessarily feel like I need ways to validate that I'm connecting with them because I just know I am. When I try to connect with others' loved ones, I know I connect with someone, but I really struggle with getting a way to validate who I'm connecting with. I know my ego is probably just ego to connect, which is blocking my intuition. So any tips on that would be great. For example, I did a Reiki session on someone, and it was her friend that booked it. The friend informed me that my client's father had passed years ago, and she felt like she still had energy and emotions to release. During the session, I had a man come through. My intuition told me it was her father, along with the fact that he was present during the whole session and helped so much on her heart chakra. I was trying to get information on him to validate who he was, but I was only getting glasses, which didn't resonate with my client. I explained that my mediumship wasn't strong, so I couldn't confirm who it was, but whoever it was loved her so much. Hearing this made her cry, so I knew that regardless of validation, she needed to hear that. I know this probably will develop more with practice, but I get a little discouraged when I can't validate who the person is. I also seem to connect more easily when I'm aware of the person who passed, which makes it very hard to believe I'm connecting genuinely and not just because I'm aware someone has passed. Any advice on getting validation from spirit? Do I just need to practice more and work on removing my ego, or trust my intuition more the ways I do when I connect with my own family? And I think those are all really perfect questions for this about getting more validation. Is that, and we both know this from years of doing this work, sometimes it's so crystal clear and there's no doubt, and you can feel that person and describe them and you get their sense of humor. It's as real as someone being in the room. And then other times it's a little more elusive or a little bit further back, and we might just get little snippets, and that's harder to validate. It also is hugely dependent on the person that you're reading for, in how receptive they are or what they may expect to come through. You have shared many, many times on Reiki being a beautiful catalyst for you for mediumship. So what's your take on this?
Confidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on this, because this happens to all of us. Wouldn't you agree? Where you sense someone, you know you're sensing someone, but they're not talking, and you're trying to pull them in, and the more you try, the more it doesn't work. I really think it comes down to confidence. So when she says, do I just need more practice? I would say yes. And I think two ways she could get that one would be joining an intuitive development circle where you're with other practicing mediums and everyone knows we're practicing, we're students, we're trying this. Totally takes the pressure off. Another thing she can do is remind herself people are coming to you for Reiki. They're not coming to you for mediumship. So that alone should take a lot of the pressure off. And then when you're done with the Reiki session, because I don't think you should talk during a Reiki session, that's just my opinion. Have you ever gone in for a massage, Denise, and they talk the whole time? It just takes away from the meditative experience. So when I would do Reiki, I would just do Reiki on the person. And then when I was done, I would say, stay there as long as you want and then meet me at the table. Excuse me. And then I would discuss some things that came forward. But something she can do is say, I hope you really enjoyed that Reiki. Can I share with you some things I was feeling and sensing in your energy? Share that, but then say, I'm studying and practicing my mediumship, and I think I might have felt some things connected to family members for you. Do I have your permission to share those as well?
That's a great suggestion. And also, when she said, should I trust my intuition more the way I do when I connect with my own family? Yes, and yes.
Yes.
That, how is it coming through? Are you getting a feeling? Is it an emotion? Do you have a memory? Do you hear a song? Pay attention to how it comes through. And I think we've spoken about this many times, in that when we connect with our own family, we often get emotion because we know their story, we know the validation. So to connect with someone else in spirit, you don't have that the expectations or the knowledge of who they were, and so it's a little bit different. But 100% agree with you that practice and confidence and learning to keep handing it back to spirit, just keep volleying it back and saying, okay, please bring me, whenever I start a reading, or I always pray and humbly ask for what's highest and best to come through for the person, but I want to be the voice box for spirit. I don't want it to be about me.
Yes, that's such a good way of just removing that ego from it. And something else you can do is just get a lot of practice with strangers.
Yes.
Not clients, not friends, complete strangers. I used to volunteer my services for free anytime I could. I mean, one of my neighbors was opening up a Pilates studio years ago when I was developing, and I was like, do you want me to do tarot readings at your studio opening?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you walked into a Pilates studio, would you expect someone there with tarot cards? But there I was. I just kept offering my services because I wanted to meet strangers that I didn't know, had no connection to help me. You went to a lot of psychic fairs. Didn't that help you?
Oh, it did. And that's a great way to learn to buffer out all the extraneous noise and energy around you. But when you mention sitting in circle with people, or an intuitive development circle, or program or practice, how so many times people will get the validation that they need. Oh, I am doing it the right way, or it comes through the same way for this person as it does for me. Just to have someone else express what you may be feeling or not, and not quite have words for, or just having someone else validate that the way they do it the same way that you do, that can be hugely helpful in getting a stronger connection.
Tremendously. And I'd like to recommend a podcast. I think I've sent it to you too, Denise. It's called Mediumship Matters.
Yes.
And it's a British medium. And she's really honest and down to earth about being a medium and how hard it is and how wonderful it is. So that's a great one to check out. And finally, on my other podcast, I interviewed Jeffrey Wands, a well-known medium in Long Island. And I was just doing some homework and listening to some other podcast interviews he had done. And when he was on Jacob Cooper's podcast, he asked Jeffrey, why are all these famous mediums from Long Island? Teresa Caputo, George Anderson, John Edward, James Van Prague, Sylvia Brown, I think he mentioned. He just rattled off all these mediums. And I was like, gosh, I never really thought about that. They're all from Long Island. And Jeffrey Wan said, I think it's the water, that it's an island and we're surrounded by water. And I was like, no, sir, I respectfully disagree. I think it's the confidence. Those New Yorkers just have such an innate confidence. Am I right?
It can be a part of the demographic, yes.
I love that confidence. I'm not saying anything negative about it, but I think there's something to it. I told you guys on a couple of episodes ago, I went to see John Edward do his platform mediumship, which is always a phenomenal experience. Denise, you should see him work. If he says, I have someone who's holding, I don't know, a pearl ring. They would say, "No, I don't know any." "Yes, you do." "No, I really don't know anyone that has a pearl ring." "Yes, you do. Think again." And they'd
Yeah.
go, "Oh yeah, my grandmother did have a pearl," and I was like, "Geez, Louise, I would never have that confidence to be like, think again."
When I saw him present years ago, and he brought something up that was could be perceived as a bit embarrassing for the person in the audience that he was reading for, but it wasn't to embarrass them. It was to bring through the validation, and he just told the story, just like he was telling a story, like someone was whispering in his ear. He's phenomenal. I mean,
Oh, he really
he's
is.
such a strong, but he's been very open about what it takes to be that level of connection, and it's a dedication and a process and boundaries, and there's a lot involved.
Yeah, which is why we always recommend studying the great mediums, reading their books, watching them perform, and do their platform stuff because you can learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps.
And I just want to add in, but not compare yourself with what you're doing to what someone else, their way of doing it.
Oh, such a
Because
good point. Yes.
that can be detrimental. It comes back to a great way to block the confidence that you're looking for.
Yeah, so true. Okay, our next one says, first, I just want to say I started listening to both your podcast about 6 months ago, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all the episodes. Both Denise and Deb are wonderful, and the rapport and friendships you all share is inspiring. I just listened to your episode of Enlightened Empaths that dropped today. I had to reach out about your move and the emotions it brought to you and your girls. I wanted to share my very similar stories and the synchronicities that took place with it. My husband and I bought the house our girls grew up in back in 2002. My youngest was only 6 months old, and our oldest was just 4. We purchased our dream house located on a cul de sac with other young families on the street. The houses around us had just turned over also, so we all had young children who spent summer days playing outside. I'm a teacher as well, so we always had our summers off together, which was truly a blessing. Anyway, like your family, we shared so many memories in that house. From first steps to lost teeth to first communion to grade school graduations, first dates, holiday parties, you get the idea. It was a great home. Eventually, our oldest graduated from college and was married and moved to Chicago, and our baby was attending college out of state. Every summer, she ended up interning out of town. So even summer breaks left my husband and I sitting in the house alone, basically only using 3 of the rooms. We decided we needed to downsize into a condo and eventually purchased one in Florida. In the spring of 23, we found a condo in an area we loved, although we did have to gut and remodel it. So we took the leap and purchased it. We then went about clearing out our house and decided we would try to sell it on our own. We listed it on our neighborhood Facebook page. One Saturday morning, a young couple called and wanted to see the house. When they arrived, they had their 5-year-old with them, and the mother was pregnant. They were absolutely lovely, and the little girl seemed to feel right at home, even telling us that they needed 4 bedrooms because she had 2 older siblings also. We showed them around, telling them about the great families on the cul-de-sac, and they told us their children attended the Catholic school that was a stone's throw from our house. I said it was perfect, as they could now walk to school. Before they left, the dad came into the kitchen to talk to my husband and me. He explained that this was his second wife, as his first wife, the mother of the 3 children, had died of cancer several years before. They were currently living in the house he had purchased with his first wife, which was in a neighborhood just down the street, but thought they needed to move for his new wife's sake so they could all have a fresh start. They left and called 10 minutes later to offer above asking because they knew it was the perfect house for them. He also asked if he could bring the older children by the next day, as they would be a harder sell, as they weren't very keen on leaving their house, understandably. They came the next day, and my husband and I showed them around, and then we took them through the woodcut that led to the Catholic school they attended. They were thrilled at how close they were, and I explained that our girls had always had their friends over for the church's annual festival, and they thought that was pretty cool. My husband had just retired as the head girls basketball coach at the high school my girls attended, which they would attend in a few years. He had several basketballs from the school, and we had some sweatshirts and other items we gave to them as well. They were thrilled, and needless to say, they approved. When we were walking through the woods, I talked to the mom, and she had said they had prayed to the children's mother, and had asked her help in finding a home that children would love where they could have a new start. I told her that I had also asked my dad, who had just died the year before, to help us find a young couple who would love the house as much as we did. I told the young mother that I thoroughly believe in divine intervention and that I thought the children's mother and my dad had brought them to our house. After we told our girls about the family, they were thrilled as well. They were a little sad about the house not being ours anymore, but my oldest, who has always been wise beyond her years, had a wonderful outlook. She said, "Mom, we grew up in this house and have nothing but amazing memories, but we don't live here anymore. So even if you and Dad stayed here, it still won't be our home anymore. We will always have those memories, though, and those we will keep regardless of where you and Dad are living. We will make new memories in the house you are in next, but they will be memories from our adult life." So I know it was meant to be that we would find our dream condo and sell our home to a wonderful family that loves it as much as we did. As I told her friends, it's a happy family home full of love and good energy, but it needs to have a young, loud family in it again. I think that's when the house is happiest. Anyway, I wanted to share that we love our new condo, and we just purchased a condo in Florida last summer. Things truly work out the way they are supposed to, and I know your new adventure will only bring new memories full of love and continued happiness. I'm thrilled for you and your new family. Well, I just wanted to share that story to everyone because, Denise, it is so hard to go through these big changes, selling a house that you raise your family in. But look at the synchronicities that she experienced. And I love that the woman who's moving into this house called on her husband's former wife for help. And this lovely listener called on her dad in heaven for help. And they conspired to make this happen. That's how it all works.
It really is. It's a beautiful story, and in many ways, it correlates so closely with your own.
I know it really is so interesting the way it all kind of lined up, and the synchronicities just keep coming. So I just thank her for sharing that story because it's a great reminder that even happy change can sometimes be sad, but there's always that reminder that it's all working out the way it's supposed to. That family needed a young family, and I agree. It's the same with my old house.
Right. And the house is happy, and I love that.
Absolutely. Me too.
Our next one starts with frequently outside the supermarket in which I shop are homeless or unhoused people looking for assistance. Sometimes I'll exchange pleasantries and hand them some food and money and then go on my way. But on one particular day, an agitated man entered the supermarket and followed me down several aisles. Feeling unsafe, I whispered out loud for protection from my angels. As I was in the checkout line, I decided to ask the grocery clerk to help me to my car. Unfortunately, my ego brain talked me out of my intuition and I didn't ask. Just as I was leaving, the grocery clerk smiled and said, "Let me help you to your car." I realized the importance of following your gut instincts over your rational brain. I sat in the car and thanked God and my guardian angel, but as soon as I drove off, my rational brain kicked in again as I thought, surely the store managers were also watching the homeless man. It had nothing to do with God or angels. How silly of me. As I continued on my drive, I had a nudge to stop by my favorite nature trail and sit on a bench overlooking the river. When I sat on the bench, I felt a tree twig sweep against my hair. When I turned around, there was an angel Christmas ornament dangling from the branch just over my head. Lesson learned. And that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And haven't we all been there though? I mean, don't you instinctively as empaths, we always want to help those in need. And when we can, we do. And then there's those other moments where you kind of get a feeling like, oh, I don't think this person is on the up and up and they might be having nefarious things. And then, at least for me, I talk myself out of that. Like, don't be so judgmental, Samantha, be nice, be kind. And so there's always that kind of a dual thing going on, I think, when you're extra sensitive as empaths. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yes. And it is. It's very difficult to incorporate that energy. But when you feel, I do really appreciate that this person shared that it wasn't that this was the first time they had gone to help someone, that this person not because they were unhoused or not because it was the energy they felt being followed, and it didn't feel safe. And that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't lumping it all into one demographic. She was just talking about one specific person that made her uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think we have to rely on that. That's that book, The Gift of Fear, how we have to really listen to that and trust that, and it's okay, especially for women, because, really, we're taught culturally, it's ingrained in us to always be nice and to smile and to reach out and help others, and that's lovely. But we also have to watch ourselves, and we
Very
feel
true.
sometimes, I don't know, silly asking for that help. I know I used to teach a class. Um, it was 6 to 11. It was a very, very long class. It was an accelerated class for people who work during the day. And there were some nights where I'd be driving home and I'd be like, oh crap, I forgot to get milk for breakfast or what have you. And I'd have to stop at the grocery store. And this one time I did have a very sinister fellow following me, like whatever aisle I was in, he was in, and it made me uncomfortable. And when I was checking out, I said to the woman, I said, is that night security guard still here? Could he walk me to my car? And the minute I said it, I felt silly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, absolutely. So this man came out and walked me to my car, and no one followed, the guy who had been closely behind me in all the aisles was nowhere to be found. And I said, I'm so sorry to bother you. I said, I just get nervous. And he said, ma'am, first of all, this is my job. Second of all, I have daughters. I want them to always feel comfortable asking someone like me for help. He goes, thirdly, this job is boring. You give me something to do. So just keep that in mind. And then I would always stop there and we would always talk and he'd walk me to my car.
Oh, so you made a friend.
That's right. All right, this next one says, the first 6 years of my life were a bit traumatic, witnessing my mother being abused by my bio father and occasionally getting caught in the crossfire. In the late 60s, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my mother and I ran away from home. Though I don't really remember, for a time we lived with my maternal grandparents. My mom then remarried a man with 3 children who were in and out of our home. I was fortunate to be able to see my maternal grandparents on a regular basis, often spending the night on the weekends. Their house was a large 2-story farmhouse with an attic, which had a separate staircase through the kitchen and basement. For years, when I slept in my mom's childhood room, I would dream I was floating up out of bed. I would then, with intentional direction and purpose, fly over whoever was staying upstairs, then fly down the stairs into my grandparents' room and over them to check on them. I would then fly into every room, down the basement stairs, and out the exterior basement door. I would then fly around the whole exterior of the house and back into the main entry door through the family room and upstairs back into bed. This was a recurring dream well into my teen years. As I got older and started learning more about spirit and woo-woo, I took it as my way of making sure we were all safe and protected. Just wondering if you had any insight. And talking with one of my cousins, he had a similar experience. Well, that does sound like traditional astral projection. And oftentimes, especially when you have a traumatic upbringing, the soul will leave the body more readily and easily than in other situations. And so I don't doubt that you were doing this, especially in that hypnagogic state between wake and sleeping. That's often when we do have our astral projection experiences. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you're right. It can be a response too, but it also ties in beautifully with this person being very intuitive. And I bet they're amazing at remote viewing and picking up on the auric field of other people.
I know. It's amazing and can be expanded on and strengthened with practice.
And then at the end saying that in talking, one of the cousins had a similar experience. Is there a genetic connection to being I've never heard of a genetic connection with astral projection, but it would make sense.
Yeah, it would, because really all astral projection requires is some innate intuitive ability and an open mind and a predominant right brain way of thinking and approaching problem solving.
Right.
And that can all be genetic.
Yeah. And I really, really love that. I mean, that the person wrote, learning more about spirit and woo-woo, I took it as my way of making sure we're all safe and protected.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect way to describe it. The next one says, Denise blew my mind by saying the veil is gone on the latest podcast. What did I miss? Please explain. I think that was more of a personal statement for me because I've been doing these very in-depth meditative journeys this year, and I'm realizing that there is it's much thinner, if it's much easier to step into that non-ordinary reality than it's ever been before. So of course I did what I always do, and when it's happening for me, I ask other people if it's happening for them, and they were having similar experiences. So that's what that was about. Is just it seems like there's much more flow and almost a reciprocity between spirit and where we are right now. I think they're here to help.
Do you think it's because the aliens are coming?
I think there's a lot of activity around us right now. We'll just leave that as an open. I think that there is a lot of presence around us now, 100%.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, a lot of shifts taking place.
Yes.
All right, this next one says, I've listened to you for years. Well, thank you. I took a class with you and Denise. Love you both. I was listening to you talking about the Santa letters you saved. A few years ago, I got a red scrapbook album and put all their letters in it chronologically. My youngest is now 26. We take it out with the Christmas decorations each year. Funny to look at and share now with boyfriends and spouses. Just thought I would share. I love that idea. So I think I had shared on one of the podcasts before when I was moving, the hardest part was going through, just all the memorabilia, and I organized it into bins. So, each daughter has her own bin or two with all her paperwork, artwork, and all the letters to Santa. And now I need to do this. I love this idea. I even saved, because we have our Elmer, our elf on the shelf is Elmer. And Elmer always comes with a letter from Mrs. Claus. And so the girls would always write back to Elmer, and I saved those too. I love this idea of putting it in an album.
Right. And that would be fun for future generations or grandchildren or great-grandchildren to see.
Yeah.
To get to see their parents or their aunties and uncles in a different light.
Yeah, I totally am going to take that example. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes. The next one says, I was listening to the podcast in the car and kept thinking about psychometry and how one could make something special for a multi-generational family. You may have heard about making diamonds from cremation ashes. Now imagine making an ornate necklace composed of diamonds from multiple generations. This could turn out to be a really cool necklace or something that's totally haunted. It's just a thought. Also, I too have planned my funeral to include the after party, including the playlist. I wrote my obituary over a decade ago and continue to update it every few years. I don't take any of it too seriously and just want things to be fun. For example, the playlist after the party is Oingo Boingo's Dead Man Party in its entirety. So someone has a good sense of humor to write this. and it normalizes death. I think that's a very cool idea about the necklace.
Yeah, I do too. It was funny when I was listening to John Edward do his readings for people in the audience. One of the women asked a question, what does my husband say about what I did with his ashes? And John Edwards said, well, I can answer that without even connecting with him. He doesn't care. He said, I've never met a deceased person who's mad at where they were buried or where their ashes were scattered. He doesn't care. So a couple of people later, he's reading for another widow, and her husband had such a personality. John was like, oh, I got to stay with this guy for a while. And he was sharing all the practical jokes that the husband had pulled on the wife and other friends. And one of the things he said was, did he actually scare a priest? And the woman laughed and she said, yeah, it was at my daughter's christening and he hid in the confessional and jumped out. So they're laughing, and then John goes, oh my gosh, this guy's trying to pull a practical joke on all of us. He's saying, tell her and tell the audience, I absolutely hate where you sprinkled my ashes. Okay. The
That's
next one says, the other day I was home alone. My kids were at school and my husband had gone to work. It was a busy day and I was just about to leave for errands when I suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. I'd been feeling perfectly fine up until that point, but as soon as my hand touched the doorknob, I was stopped in my tracks. I'm not someone who prays often, but I felt compelled to ask for protection. I said out loud, Archangel Michael, if you can hear me, protect me, my children, and my husband today. And I thanked him. Immediately, the nausea lifted, and I went on with my day. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, and everyone was safe and sound by the time they were home and in bed. That night, I had a vivid dream where I was walking through my house. As I was about to leave, I looked down and saw a pendant on the ground. When I picked it up, it was an Archangel Michael pendant. I woke up feeling certain that Archangel Michael had answered my prayer, protecting my family from something, though I'll never know exactly what. I am now in search of a gold rectangular Archangel Michael pendant similar to the one I found in my dream. Now on to part 2. When I was a child, I used to lay in bed at night before falling asleep. I would close my eyes and see a small white spot right between my eyes. The spot would grow larger and start to spiral. The longer I focused on it, the more I felt like I was moving, even though my body was still. It felt like I was traveling down a winding path through a cave system. One time I followed this path for so long that I ended up at a castle where several other kids were waiting. It felt like a very safe space, but I fell asleep shortly after arriving, so I never experienced much more than walking up the stairs to the large doors. As I got older, this stopped happening. But recently the memory came back to me. Now, when I lay in bed, I try to focus on that white light again, and I've been able to make it spiral once more. It's hard to keep it focused for long, but I find it really intriguing. Do you think this could be related to my third eye chakra, or might it be some form of astral projection? I'd really appreciate any insight. Okay, first let's start with the Archangel Michael story. I absolutely love that. I think she listened to herself, the nausea that wasn't there before, that was there, and she knew it was a warning and decided to take action by praying and asking Archangel Michael to protect them. And it's so hard sometimes when we have those intuitive feelings about ourselves and we take action to prevent the warning because we don't get the validation, right? Like nothing bad happened. So she's like, well, what was this? But the validation is that nothing bad happened because she took action and prayed to Archangel Michael. And she got further validation with this amazing dream experience. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yes, it's an excellent way to describe it.
Yeah. And I would say go on eBay or Etsy to look and see if you can't find a medallion similar to the one in your dream. You might even be able to find like an artist on Etsy who could recreate it. Anyway, part 2, I love the part 2 where you would see the spiral, the white light in your third eye, and you'd see it spiral and you'd follow it. That does sound a lot like astral projection. Again, similar to the other listener, it's in that hypnagogic state where you're not awake, but you're not fully asleep. So I would say it's both intuition, your third eye opening, but it's also your soul traveling. This happened to me. I wrote about it in my book, The Awake Dreamer. I would often see a purple light in my third eye, and I would follow that too. And I had several dreams when I was a kid of going to a place kind of like she's describing, except mine wasn't a castle. It was more like a rec center with a bunch of other kids. And years later, I was telling one of my closest friends about it, and she started finishing all my sentences because she said when she was a kid, she would dream of going to the same place. And I thought that was really, really wild and amazing. So I think it's both. I think it's a form of astral projection. If you read, Sylvain Muldoon has a really good book on astral projection. And of course, Robert Monroe. If you just read his first few chapters on how he first astral projected, it sounds really, really similar to what she's talking about. And it is hard as we get older. You know, when we're kids, we have these experiences all the time. And I think it's because there just wasn't a lot going on in our head. You know, we weren't worried about paying bills and getting up for work and, do I have enough ingredients in the pantry to make dinner that night? We don't have all of that when we're a kid. We're just wide open. But as we get to be adults, we have to work a lot harder to getting into that frame of mind of just releasing and letting go and focusing.
This also ties back to the question about the veil, because what it's if there are multiple dimensions happening at the same time, did she? You've mentioned this several times about stepping into another timeline. Have you stepped through the looking glass into something that's happening simultaneously or in a different time frame that you're able to revisit through this journey or this meditative state to a different reality? And I know that sounds really woo, but
I was going to say, Denise,
well, it's
where are the magic mushrooms hiding on your desk?
nope.
So I agree.
It feels like, though, it does feel like you're under the influence of something to be able to step into those realities, but you don't have to be in order to find them. So,
No, definitely not. And if on my other podcast, we did some deep dives into the declassified CIA documents of the remote viewing program. And if you read those, they're free online, anyone can access them. It is amazing how these alternate realities are there. And one of the things that they talk about is how all time exists all the time.
right. And then you get into the concept of it being illusionary. Is it an illusion that so it's a fun rabbit hole to go down. On a completely different note, our next one says, I don't know if you've talked about this in an episode, but I was wondering what you both think about untapped, untrained intuition and its relationship to anger. I've been thinking that maybe those of us who learn suppression rather than acceptance due to our upbringing may end up having more intense levels of rage or anxiety long term because we've kept the lid on it for so many years. It makes me think of those movies in which someone who has superpowers randomly experiences bursts in ways that end up being unintentionally harmful because they weren't given the understanding to train and use it regularly. It also makes sense to me that when you start to open, it doesn't do what you expect, just like when those superheroes have to train in order to actually harness what's inside them. What do you think? I've got to thinking about it based on my own experience of suppression and the long-term effects it's been having on me. I'm working on healing past trauma, but I also feel as though the acceptance of my intuition and practicing opening hasn't fully left me feeling less anxious or angry. It seems to me that the amount of time it's spent bottled up matters too. And one thing that popped into my head with that is also if your intuition was negated or you were told that you didn't know what you were talking about or there was gaslighting or it was taboo to talk about, so that could fester anger as well.
Oh,
like
for sure.
A low simmer.
Yeah. And you've got to figure out what to do with that anger. But first, you have to really sit with that anger and find a healthy outlet for it. And I think that's important too. You can journal it, you can cry it, you can break stuff. I mean, gosh, we used to have a business in our town where you could go just to break stuff. Have you seen those businesses?
I have, yeah. They
Yeah.
sledgehammers and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you can do that. You can scream into a pillow, whatever you need to do to get it out of your body. I think EMDR therapy is fantastic for that as well. But it's important to allow yourself to feel all of this. And I think sometimes that can be a block to opening up our intuition.
But it's also anger is an intense emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And is it easier sometimes to express anger than to express the vulnerability of intuition?
Yes. Isn't there a saying that anger is just sadness with a better PR agent? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's just anger is a way to feel empowered, but it's a false empowerment.
And this person made a really good point about the long-term effect of suppression and how even if you're doing the work to heal that past trauma and looking for that acceptance of your intuition and practicing, there still will be residual anxiety or anger, but with time, you'll be, hopefully, I really do hope this for this person, they'll be able to redirect that energy that's gone towards anger into opening more fully into their intuitive abilities and connection with spirit.
When I was going to therapy through my divorce, that was the one question he could not answer for me. I said, I have all this righteous anger and I don't know what to do with it. I said, I feel like I've got like this ball. Like, you remember that hot potato game?
Yes.
And I would say, I feel like someone passed me a hot potato and that's anger and I'm not going to pass it to someone else. What do I do with it? And he really never could answer me that question. I had to figure it out on my own. And maybe that was part of his therapy. I don't know. But what really helped me was just allowing myself to feel that righteous anger and being like, yeah, you have every right to be pissed off, and that's okay. And just walking with it and listening to it and really reflecting. And I even like wrote down timelines of my righteous anger and I got it all out. It not like in one day or in one weekend, over time, but giving expression to it really, really helped me.
And because you did that, it's not holding you hostage now.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. It'll spring up still from time to time, but at least I know what to do with it now.
Right. And that's just the human part of us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our next one says, for the past couple of years, I've been teaching my four grandchildren, who are all under the age of 14, how important it is to help others. So for Christmas, I give them each money and tell them they can keep as much of the money they want, but they must give some of it to someone else. I was so happy to hear that every year they go to an animal shelter and donate almost half their Christmas money. I see the joy it brings to them, and hopefully this will carry over to when they become adults. Well, that's a lovely idea. To really teach and show our children and grandchildren how to give back and how to complete that circle. I think that's really, really important.
Yes. And that they're doing it by choice, not by force.
Yeah, exactly. Choose to give this back in any way that you can. That might have been in response to when I was talking about how at Christmas time, when my kids were little up until, high school, I would make them, and I would make them do something nice every year for someone else. And usually we would make blankets and bring them to the animal shelter so the animals would have something in there to snuggle up with. But it's so nice to demonstrate that, I think, for kids.
Yes. Yes. And it is about kindness. And if you have something you can share with someone, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. And that leads beautifully into our next one that says, last fall, as I was visiting my elderly mother in her assisted living facility, we were sitting quietly when a large hawk suddenly appeared at the window. It grasped the screen with its claws and flapped its wings against the window, staring in at us for a full minute, then flew away. I immediately recognized this as a spiritual sign, but couldn't find any helpful information about the meaning that seemed relevant to me. Then I listened to your November 25th podcast about animal signs, and you said hawks could be a warning of psychic attacks, and it made sense. I've endured a toxic relationship with my mother and sister for my whole life. I'm now 59. Both are what I would characterize as psychic vampires, and both singled me out as the emotional punching bag of the family. Decades of therapy and inner spiritual work have helped me come to terms with this, but I've had to set some pretty strong boundaries to protect myself. In recent years, my mother has suffered from dementia and become frail, but still capable of sneak attacks. I think it's possible the hawk was a warning to not let my guard down and continue to protect my spirit from both her and the continuing negativity I feel from my sister. I just wanted to share this rather dramatic visitation and hear what you both thought about it. I've never, ever heard or seen anything about a hawk acting that way, so if I was ever in that situation or it happened, I would damn sure pay attention. But it goes back to the message resonated with the person who saw it, and that's the key.
Yeah, and it's important to pay attention to those signs, especially when you're dealing with someone who has those narcissistic tendencies, because we can get lulled into this feeling of, okay, everything's better in this relationship. I've learned to set boundaries. We're all good. I don't need to keep my guard up. But the hawk came to tell her, yeah, you still need to keep your guard up because you never know.
Right.
I think that's the hard part of dealing with emotionally abusive people is they're never like that all the time.
No.
You know, if they were always mean and rude, you would just stay away. But they're not. They're very, very nice most of the time, and then bam, they hit you with, a zing, a comment, a sarcastic, whatever. And I think that hawk was coming just to give her a heads up.
Well, the other aspect of this is the fact that it's her elderly mother in an assisted living facility, which adds a whole other layer of trying to make more of a healthy relationship before someone transitions, or trying to let bygones be bygones, or trying to give someone the benefit of doubt that they're not hanging on to that old anger and malice and manipulation.
And that's hard. But you know what? They might be that way until their dying breath.
Yep.
And that is what it is, and you might have that reconciliation before you don't know, but it's important to be always mindful of our boundaries. I think when we're around people that aren't always out for our best interest,
And
it's
you
especially hard when it's your mom.
100%. And you can keep doing the work after someone transitions.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
we need to remember that sometimes it's easier.
Yeah, I know. Well, those were some great questions and stories.
They were a real variety, which is our audience, a real variety of folks.
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed a lot of those. I wanted to remind everyone that Denise and I are teaching our mediumship classes this summer. So if you want to join us, you can go to either of our websites, SamanthaFay.com or thegratefulmessenger.com, and learn more about our classes. We're going to be teaching them on Saturdays, and you'll have time to work in class with partners and classmates to really experience and hone your own mediumship. And there will be partner exercises outside of class as well, so you can work one-on-one with classmates.
Yes, and it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, a lot of information, but also a lot of fun, and a great way to really experience and figure out what kind of a medium you are.
Yes.
And don't forget that for my birthday coming up in June, I am asking for people to, if you feel compelled, to just do an anonymous, random act of kindness for someone else, and then send it to me and share it so I can share it on an upcoming show. And I've already had some great ones come in, Denise. It's really
Oh,
exciting.
that's nice.
Yeah. So you can just email me, Samantha@SamanthaFay.com, if you feel compelled to do so. I really would appreciate it. Anything else you want to add?
Well, I do have an upcoming membership that there's going to be more information. It's a group of like-minded people that are just going to learn and grow and share time together. It's in the works, so there will be a founding member opportunity. That it's been in my heart for a long time, and it's about creating a space for intuitive, heart-led people who are looking for a deeper connection, soul-aligned learning, and mutual support. And it's about building a community, because I realize for years you've been listening to me say that we have to tap into the collective. We have to look out for each other. And I got a big nudge from Spirit that it's time to offer something with that. So I'll have more information on that upcoming. If you're interested, you can send me an email, Denise at the Grateful Messenger, and just put interested in the subject line.
That sounds awesome.
I'm very excited about it. It's going to be fun.
Well, you always make everything fun, and you always give such extra time to everyone, and I just think you're a fabulous teacher. So people are lucky to work with you that way.
Well, thank you. And I really want to find a space, develop a space together in kind of a co-op type of a deal where we can help each other step up, or help promote each other, or help encourage, because I think that's the key right now. I truly in my heart do. And I absolutely love helping people find each other.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
That and the hokey pokey.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope you have a beautiful, magical week filled with your own signs from spirit and nature. Remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Thank you.